Hello, and welcome this Sunday evening. I appreciate you all tuning in. My name is Kate Craig, and I'm running for state senate here in District 3. So that's Washington, Carter, and Johnson counties. And I'm really excited to continue this conversation here tonight because there's so much going on and so much has happened. And so if you're just joining us, please add in the comments where you're joining us from so we know. And if you have questions or anything as that comes along, we'll answer it as it happens live. And if there's questions that come up after the live has ended, we'll keep monitoring the comment section to make sure that your question gets answered. Because these are all incredibly important topics that we're covering every month. So much is happening. So much is on the ballot this election cycle. It's not just names; these are issues. And we have a real opportunity for change here because I'm running against an incumbent that's been in office for 32 years. The world has changed since 1990, and I think it's time that we had some common sense in Nashville. So if you're just joining us, my name is Kate Craig. I'm running for state senate here in District 3. And I want to pop up, make sure that this is running throughout it. Opportunities to volunteer. So please sign up to volunteer. I'm really excited to share that we opened up our campaign office yesterday. And it's at 419 West Walnut Street or West Market Street and in Johnson City. And we're there Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it's great location. Please sign up to volunteer because we need people out canvassing, phone banking, text banking. And at the end of this month, we're going to get postcards going. So lots of great ways to connect with voters in our community. And I like to start these off with a story from the campaign trail. And nothing seems more pertinent than talking about a bill that was passed very quietly because I don't remember this being covered in the news. And what triggered it was reading a New York Times article about how our state legislatures have been passing bills to interfere in the free market in the way that retirement accounts are set up in the Treasury Department and what type of investment accounts are used. And so this bill in Tennessee, which was Senate Bill 2649, this got passed in 2022, is a bill that does just that. That Rusty Crowe and the Republican Party here in Tennessee decided that they wanted to interfere in the free market and said that if an investment firm decides that it doesn't use anything related to fossil fuels, then Tennessee's Treasury cannot use it. And so this bill makes it limits options for retirees. It limits and it allows the fossil fuel industry to come in and regulate and dictate the market rather than a free market coming in and consumers dictating the market. And so we have a government that's overreaching in this. And so I want to share just a really quick video of this bill passing and the conversation that happened. And so let's see, let me share my screen. Let's see. Here we go. And we're going to play this. So I hope you all get to watch this here.
Maybe an amendment on this bill.
Let's see.
Yes, sir. We have an amendment. I have copies for
The chair seconds it. Do we have any questions? There are no amendments.
Here's the question on the bill.
Oh, wait. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Senator Gardner.
Oh, I apologize. We pulled up the committee. I'm looking for. Let me share the other one. Pulled up. We'll get the right one here in a second.
Senate Bill 20.
All right, this is it. So there's so many of these bad bills and so many videos of how and when they're talked about. I want to make sure that everybody gets to see it.
By Senator Gardenhire on consideration of House Amendment number 1.
Senator Gardenhire on House Amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will not concur on House Amendment number 1.
So Amendment 1 was to regulate it.
makes a motion to non-concur. Is there discussion? It's been properly seconded. All those favoring non-concurrence will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Senate non-concurs. And House Amendment number 1 on Senate Bill 2649.
So that amendment was to make it so that it was a little not as extreme as it was. And so, unfortunately, that amendment did not pass, as you saw. And so here
Third and final consideration.
you're going to see Senator Yarborough talk about this and how dangerous this is. And all of these videos can be found on the Tennessee General Assembly's website. These are all open to the public.
Senator Gardner, Chattanooga, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to move passage on third and final reading, Senate Bill 2649.
That's a proper motion, properly seconded. Senator Gardner, you're recognized on the bill for explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Current law authorizes the state treasurer, the governor, and the commissioner of finance administration to designate a state depository bank for the state's primary cash management and banking services. The bill would prohibit the state treasurer from entering into a contract or amendment with a state depository if the institution has a policy that prohibits financing to companies in the fossil fuel industry. The bill would provide an exemption if there is a case where the services sought are necessary for the Department of Treasury or the state to perform these functions, and the service would be unable to obtain from another contractor. Now that, Mr. Speaker, is description of the bill.
Questions on the bill?
So listen to what Senator Yarborough has to say here.
Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise in opposition to the bill. I understand the spirit with which the sponsor brings it. However, I think it's a dangerous precedent for this body to set. We're deciding as a state to intervene in the market based on the private decisions of businesses that we don't have any authority to control, and typically don't use our coercive power to try to influence. But we're unquestionably doing that here. And it also is just an intervention in the free market that people oftentimes like to talk about positively here. There are lots of financial institutions that actually compete for business through policies like this or other policies. And I think when the state of Tennessee goes into banking, we ought to be looking at where we're getting the most return for taxpayers, where our money is going to be the safest, where we're going to be doing the best doing best by the citizens of Tennessee, and shouldn't advance any agenda in any direction. I think we ought to just try to bank without putting politics at the center of it, and let private businesses do what private businesses do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion?
So I wanted to share that clip. And this bill passed. The governor has signed this bill into law because in addition to the fact that it interferes in the free market, that the Republicans have decided to do that, it also further limits our ability to help around climate change. And so we've seen where agriculture has been affected by climate change, that when I say businesses, I'll just say that we used to have a lot of skiing here outside of Northeast Tennessee, over into just across the border into North Carolina. And there were ski shops here. And there's not a whole lot of that anymore. This is affecting businesses of what's going on. It's affecting air quality. It's affecting so much stuff. And so clearly the Republicans are pushing this radical agenda to come in and control and around the Treasury Department at the detriment of Tennesseans to not only get the best bang for the buck, because we're trying to restrict that, but as well as to regulate regarding, I want to say, companies that don't include environmental policies. And so, because companies, some do, some don't, and that's fine. That's the free market. And as a consumer, we have a choice as to where we put our money. And the Republicans are saying no. So I want to point out that Rusty Crowe voted for this bill, and this bill that has hurt Tennesseans, that's hurting Tennessee workers that are government workers of Tennessee in terms of their retirement accounts, as well as hindering Tennesseans when it comes to the environment. So I share this tidbit here today on the campaign trail because I think it's important as we talk about free enterprise. And that's something that a lot of Republicans like to tout around, the free market, free enterprise. We can't stand in the way of business and all of this. And here they are standing in the way of business here. So this is just another example that I don't think that we have common sense in Nashville. And this is something that we as voters deserve. So like I said, you can find all of this information on the Tennessee General Assembly website. All of these there's no special access required. Everybody can watch these videos, see who voted on what, and check out the bills that are happening each legislative session. And I encourage everyone to do that before, after, during, all of the above, as stuff is happening, and to stay current on the issues. So today, I'm excited, and I'm excited about the guests that we have here today, and I'm also sad because of the anniversary of what's happened in our nation and in my life around this. And so tonight we're going to be talking about common sense gun laws. And we've got Jessi Fuchs, who is with Moms Demand Action, here to talk with us tonight. But I specifically chose this day because on September 16th, 2013, there was a mass shooting at the Washington Navy Yard in Building 197. And that one's significant because that's where my government customer sat. When I was working in DC, when I was working for the Navy, I was a contractor. My government customer sat in Building 197. And on that day, a disgruntled contractor came in and fatally shot 12 people and injured 3 more. That day was about 2.5 months after my motorcycle accident, and I was home on short-term disability. So the first thing I thought when I saw that this has happened was guilt. I was petrified that somebody from my company who was doing tasks that were generally assigned to me was there in Building 197, was there as this was happening, and either they had been killed or their life was in danger because I was not there. That was the first thought that I had. The second was I started reaching out to people that I knew that worked in the building and worked around the building, worked in the Washington Navy Yard. And for those that don't know, the Washington Navy Yard sits in Washington, D.C., and it is the original shipbuilding yard for the U.S. Navy. And there's a museum and all kinds of stuff on it, but it is an active military base. And to get on base, you have to register, you have to check in. There is a visitor's check-in, as well as you either show a common access card, or what we generally call a CAT card. And to get that, you have to be, be pre-certified to get that. And it comes with your name and your picture ID and all that. And you go through checkpoints to enter onto base. And as a military base, there are people carrying guns. There are people, it's our military. So I share that also little tidbit to say that there was security protocols in place on a military base. And there are people that were properly armed on base that did not prevent and could not prevent this tragedy. That this building was an original shipbuilding building that they had restored. And there's a lot of buildings in this building are like this. And it was an open air building. So when you walk into it, the center of it, you look up 5 floors where originally the ship would be, like where it was built. And everything's open air with the floors coming up beside it. And so they preserved that historical integrity for this workplace. As I understand it, all of that has changed because the building was shut down and remodeled, and the entrance of it completely changed for those who worked there, that they didn't have to relive the trauma to enter into the building the same way. But people I knew that day, like I said, I reached out to them, were hiding under desks, were trapped in conference rooms. Most of those that I knew that I worked with were, and I hate to use the phrase lucky because there's nothing lucky about experiencing any of this, but were able to flee the building at the first sound of gunfire. And so this trauma that they experience, that they have to live with every single day, the trauma of what has happened. And so, I mean, you think about that, and they didn't have access to their keys, their purse, their wallet, their nothing for days. I mean, even just to figure out, how do you get in your car and go home? How do you know if your coworker is still alive? The base was on lockdown for close to 12 hours. That people surrounding, they didn't even know, was it one shooter? At one point, people thought it was 3 shooters. And this went on for a while. It's scary when this touches your life. It's scary when this happens. And the tragic thing is this is happening more and more to people, to everybody in this nation. This is happening to people in Tennessee. This is happening to people everywhere. And it's hard to find somebody that gun violence has not touched their lives in some way. And so we talk about this because it's not that, there's this stereotype that Democrats want to come grab all the guns. And that's just not true. I will share that my wife and I are actively looking and engaging to buy our first gun. And we're engaging somebody to help us get training in terms of to be able to shoot it well. And it's not that both of us have fired weapons, but we want to get proficient with this weapon, and so that we can do it safely, store it safely, do all the things that we believe in. And so we're looking to do that. So I believe in support in the Second Amendment. I also have worked for the Second Harvest Food Bank, and I know full well that a deer can feed a family of 4 and go a long way in keeping them fed. There is so much poverty and hunger in Northeast Tennessee, in District 3, that I would never want to deny a family access to food. And that is just one of the ways that the Second Amendment protects. So I want to go ahead and bring on Jessi Fuchs with me here. And I'm going to let her introduce herself. So welcome, Jessi.
Hey, Kate. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me on to have this conversation. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, thank you for joining me. If you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your work with Moms Demand Action, maybe even tell people about Moms Demand Action, as well as, how you got involved with them.
Sure, absolutely. I would love to. So I'll just start out by saying my name's Jessi. I am a mom of 2 beautiful daughters, and I'm a wife of my husband's a veteran, and we are also gun owners. So born and raised in this area, I've lived here my whole life. But the reason I got involved with Moms Demand Action is often what happens with a lot of people that decide to get off the sidelines and join moms is it was after Parkland shooting in Florida, the school shooting in Parkland. And in my generation, Columbine was just something everyone knew about. It was definitely kind of the first one that I ever remember as a child. But when I became a mom, my first was not even 1 year old. And that happened. And it was scary to just even think about being in those parents' shoes. So I said, enough is enough. I need to start doing something. And I looked it up online and saw Moms Demand Action and just went to the next meeting that they had in the area. And it's been there ever since. So yeah, as far as what Moms Demand Action is, it is a grassroots, nonpartisan organization that works to organize and advocate for gun violence prevention. We are not anti-gun. We are pro Second Amendment. Despite what other people may tell you, we are just pro gun safety. We just want things like common sense gun legislation that the vast majority of Americans agree with anyway to be put into place. So that's kind of the gist of what Moms is. There are groups, local groups in all 50 states, all across the country. I mean, we're actually one of, if not the largest grassroots movement in the country. I mean, with millions of supporters and volunteers. So it started from a mom after Sandy Hook that started a Facebook group. And here we are now today in every single state house advocating for positive common sense gun legislation and opposing dangerous gun bills.
Absolutely. And I mean, I know I've been out at tabling with you all, I mean, over the years, because I've been a mom's volunteer at many different events. And one of the most common things is giving out gun locks. And people don't walk up and say, well, are you Democrat or Republican? Or is this gun control? People are like, oh, thank you. I've been meaning to get one. Or I've got a kid in the house. Or I know my grandchild comes and visits and I've been needing to get one. I mean, that's generally the common response, right?
Oh, absolutely. I can't tell you how many good conversations that I've had, hundreds in the Tri-Cities with everyday folks, like across all ideological spectrums. Like everyone just wants the same thing, which is to live in a safe community, protect their children, protect their loved ones, and have a community that where they feel like it's safe to go out and do things. And so oftentimes talking about safe storage, the reason we talk about safe gun storage so much in community events is because that's something we can do right now without any kind of legislation. We don't need anyone on Capitol Hill to do that for our family to keep them safe. We can go ahead and on our own, make sure your guns are safely locked up, unloaded, separate from ammunition, that does not have access, or that no one else can get access to. So that right there automatically makes your home safer and your family safer. So we talk about that, and giving out the gun locks is something that we've been able to do as a resource for the community, and it feels good. And even if there's only one child's life saved from all of the gun locks we've given over the years, it was worth it. So it's great to be out in the community, and you would be very surprised at how much we all agree on across the board.
Oh, absolutely. We talk about the gun locks, and I'll share that when so Columbine was my senior year. When I was at Science Hill, that was it. I mean, it terrified us. We didn't know if this was going to be a thing that happened, and which school was it going to happen next. And then to compound that, so now guns are on everybody's minds. Of course, they ban trench coats. They do all of that stuff, but nobody talked about the guns. And so then we're preparing to graduate. So we're all lined up at Freedom Hall to do the walkthrough, so everybody knows what to expect the day of graduation. And we get told by, I believe it was our vice principal at the time, that a junior at the school, his name was Justin, had gotten a hold of his parents' gun and was playing, I think, Russian roulette with it and died. And so we all just got this tragic news. And I mean, this was somebody that we all knew. And and so if safe gun storage would have saved his life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Children should never have access to a gun, especially obviously without being supervised. But even if you are supervising the child with the gun, you should be the one in charge and in control of that firearm. So obviously training, and there are different ways to do safety training with children. And if that's the avenue you feel strongly that is going to work for your family, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But at the end of the day, the responsibility of keeping your child safe lies on the adult. So, safe storage is a way that you can maintain that safety for your child. If they can't access it because it's in a safe, then you don't have to worry about something like that happening where maybe they think it's funny or they're not taking it as seriously as they should. And then it's, life ending. So,
Right.
yeah, at the end of the day, the onus is on the adults to keep everyone safe, not the children. You can't tell your kids, don't touch that gun and expect them to not touch that gun.
Everybody has met the child that goes as soon as that parent leaves the room, and it doesn't matter what it is. It could be don't touch the Pringles. It doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. They're gonna touch the Pringles.
And they've done surveys too to talk to kids about, if they know where the gun is in their home. And, vast majority of the time, the kids know where the gun is, even if the parent thinks that they've got it hidden, like they know exactly where it is. So yeah, they know a lot more than you think. So just eliminating that risk by keeping it under either behind in a safe or lock and key, like that eliminates that risk.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I'd like to, I mean, I think we all think that we're smarter than our parents and then we're smarter than our kids. And in that sense of going, well, no, like if we knew that stuff and we thought our parents didn't know, odds are the kids know that stuff the same as that we knew that stuff.
Yeah.
So we figure that out. Kids are nosy. Kids go through stuff. Kids find stuff. They figure it out.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So
I want to pop up some gun violence numbers up here, and I know that. So these are national numbers, and these are lives lost over the years. So when we talk about gun violence, it is also suicide. It is also, in terms of injuries, in terms of like if you're cleaning your gun and you weren't properly shown how to do it and it goes off. If something, just accidental killings. Obviously this also includes malicious issues or malicious incidents, but this is all consuming. This is every type. And to date, we've had in 2022 alone, 488 mass shootings in nationwide. And we've got to do something about that to keep our communities safe.
Absolutely. And I can kind of add on to some of these statistics, if you will. Let me, Kate. There is an average of, when I first joined Moms Demand Action back after the Parkland shooting back in, I think it was 2016 or 17, goodness. Anyways, in a few years ago. And since then, around that time, the average gun death per day was around 100, maybe a little below that, of people dying by gun violence every day. It's now around 110 people every day. So if that kind of gives you a little bit of a different perspective or way of looking at it, every day, nearly 110 people have died by gun violence every single day in this country. That's mind-blowing to me. Another thing that has changed since I joined Moms, for the worst, or for the not the better, but for worse, has been gun violence is now the leading cause of death for children and teens. That used to be car accidents or cancer. It's gun violence now, leading cause.
Yeah.
So that is also where I don't understand. We know there are things that we can do that we all agree on makes sense to do, and it's just not being done. And it is the number one killer of our children. We need common sense in the state legislature.
Yes, in so many ways, but especially this. And there's been, a lot of times when these statistics come up, people say, and especially they'll go straight to murder and be like, well, you can't stop somebody from committing an act of violence.
Right.
And the thing I like to say is, well, we have speed limits, but people still speed. But when we put speed limits in, if the speed limit's 65, I'm likely to go 70 and not 112.
Right.
And we put a speed limit in, and if the person does decide to go 112, they're going to get pulled over. There's going to be accountability for that.
Mhm.
But the number of people going 112 got decreased. And so we enacted some common sense legislation to try and help keep people safe on our roadways. It's kind of like wearing a seatbelt or having airbags in cars. These became common sense measures to help keep people safe.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's, things like just having a background check on, all gun sales. That ask about anybody. They're going to say, yeah, I'd be cool with that. If everyone had to get a background check before owning a gun, that's something we can all agree on. And yet that is not the case. So it's, yeah.
That's something that that Democrats tried to pass in the state legislature this
Mhm.
past cycle to close the private gun sale loophole. And I've had people say, oh, there's not really loopholes, but there are. And so here's one that let's say I owned a gun and wanted to sell you, Jessi, a gun. I could do that without having to go, like there would be no background checks, no nothing that would
Mhm.
happen. And
Yeah.
the law would then require that it had to, if I was not a licensed gun vendor, that we would then have to go to somebody who was, to have it then go through a background check, go through all the proper requirements so that then the sale could happen.
Yes.
And
And that's not taking away the sale from you, the gun owner that wants to sell it. You're just legitimate. All you're doing is adding in that background check step, and that is it.
right, absolutely. And so
Yeah.
that's something that is common sense that still would have had the gun go from me to Jessi in this example, and the transaction still would have happened, assuming that Jessi passed the background check,
Correct.
and that but in that, we're keeping guns, out of the hands of, let's just say, somebody that's committed had all their weapons removed because of domestic violence.
Mhm.
That the court has ordered that they don't have access to weapons because they know that they will use it against somebody. There are people in our lives that all of us would go, I don't think that they should have a gun. And everybody, regardless of who anybody is, we all know somebody who that is. Maybe it's because they're blind. Maybe it's because that they have a streak of violence and that you've seen them hit their wife. Maybe, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons as to why we should go, maybe not that person.
Yeah.
And so, so there's some common sense things that we could put in place. And speaking of another bill, this one did pass, was permitless carry. This,
Yeah.
and so, but let's talk first about the different types of gun permits in Tennessee. And so, let's see, I have this link here somewhere. Let's see, I'm going to do this here live because I might have closed it. Tennessee, I'm just Googling Tennessee gun permits. And it's going to take me to the handgun permits type in Tennessee. So I want to share the screen so everybody can see the types of permits that you can get here in Tennessee, because there's different kinds. And so this is the first one that came up on the Google search. Like, this is obviously, I'm on a Tennessee.gov website. And so you have the enhanced carry handgun, or the enhanced handgun carry permit. And so what this is that it is a permit for 8 years that allows you to carry. And what am I say? It is kind of like the basic level. I guess is kind of how I'm referring to it. And you can either conceal or open carry with this permit. And it's $100 unless you're active or honorably discharged from the military, and then it's $65. And like I said, good for 8 years. And I will say the language of it being renamed recently as an enhanced handgun carry permit makes it sound like it is a much more, like you've gotten all this training, you've gotten much more going into this permit when that's not the case. Is that kind of how you hear that, Jessi?
Yeah. Our understanding with the legislation that passed, they didn't call it permitless carry. They call it constitutional carry.
Yes.
But it is a permitless carry. So all accountability to show that that person knows how to responsibly handle a firearm, especially in public. That there are no things now that needs to take place to show that that is the case. You could literally have never held a gun in your entire life, go to the store, the gun shop, buy a gun, and have never shot it once in your life, and walk down and down the road and carry it with you. Obviously, places that say guns are not allowed, you're not supposed to be able to do that. But yeah, there are no training requirements anymore. No, nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and on top of that, another piece of what would have been a safe thing that they tried to pass that didn't, was that they wanted to make a $30 voucher for anybody who gets a permit to get a safety course.
Mhm.
And that didn't pass. So even like trying to make it easier and more accessible and more affordable for people to have access to safety training, they didn't pass that either. So that was also very scary and disheartening, that just these common sense measures that, I mean, just to caveat and say our police force supports, like our statewide.
Yes. This permitless carry bill that passed was the all sheriff's departments, police departments across the state said, please don't pass this bill. It's gonna kill more officers. It will. So they were very much against it, but they didn't care, and they passed it anyway. Clearly, I mean, there are some folks that were in our state house that they have been wanting this for years and trying really hard for years, and it's an extreme position that the average Tennessean does not hold at
Right.
all. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's something like 78% of Tennesseans are opposed this type of extreme legislation.
Yep.
This is not even something on the margins.
Yep.
Yeah. And now going on down to concealed carry, as I understand it, it went from being a course to just a quick online
online. Yep.
training.
Mhm.
And so to conceal carry, now you just have to pass just, I think, an hour long online course. I'll just say a brief course rather than committing to a time limit, but a brief course online that there's really not a lot of accountability, that you sat there and really studied it, and that you really are proficient in what's happening. And then when you get your concealed carry permit, that's how you then you are then going to conceal carry your weapon. So there's not, again, it's not common sense.
Mm-mm. Nope.
So, I just kind of want to show that then they go into lifetime and getting, retired law enforcement and all of that. But speaking also of law enforcement, that they tried to pass that if you have an enhanced handgun carry permit, which is what I'm going to call the entry level. So either you can conceal or open carry your weapon, that you are then deputized as a member of the police department. They tried to pass that one as well.
That's insane.
That has to be insulting to every member of the police department that went through training. They went through the police academy, that they stay up to date and active on everything. And yet here comes somebody that gets an enhanced carry permit, and without, any type of training or anything, and that they're deputized as a police officer. That's scary.
Yeah.
So that just screams to me the Wild West.
Yeah. Well, the data shows that more guns everywhere does not make us safer. If that were the case, we would be the safest place in the world.
Right.
More guns everywhere with less rules, less responsibility and accountability is only making things more and more dangerous and deadly. So common sense is something there are identified solutions that make sense to a vast majority of Tennesseans that can be done that just aren't being done.
Yeah.
So,
And you'd also talked about businesses, that if a business had a, no guns allowed sign up that you couldn't carry in there, another bill they tried to pass said that if that sign was up, that business owner is then responsible for the safety of everybody that is in that business, whether it's a shopper or worker, whoever, because the good guy with the gun was not allowed in. And so that's insane. That's another way of, that's hurting small business owners. That is jeopardizing the ability of small business owners to decide how to run their businesses.
yeah. Well, and another facet of the permitless carry that a lot of times people don't think about is the business component. As a small business owner that maybe has a sign up on their door that says no guns allowed, they are now the ones that are going to be required to handle the situation. If someone does come into their business, they're usually the ones that have to confront that person. So it's, and with permitless carry, if you conceal carry, the store owner might not even know that you even have it. So anyways, it makes it that much more complicated by saying any one of your potential customers in your store could be concealed carrying and not having had proved that they know how to safely carry.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I want to say, let's say that somebody gets proficient at a target, and which is a stationary, target. That's vastly different than an active shooter. And so if you've got a moving target and you don't know, is there one of them, two of them, three of them, what is that? And then and what type of training does the shooter have? Then compound that with the fact of, is law enforcement going to recognize you when they show up as the good guy with the gun? Or are you going to look like the fifth shooter in that scenario that's happening? And so, or is there another good guy with the gun in there that as you draw your weapon, that to that person, you look like a bad guy with the gun because you're drawing the weapon at the same time as the bad guys with the weapon are. And I'm not trying to put them in air quotes that if somebody does go up and shoot up a school, that's not a good thing. But it's important for people to recognize who are the good people and who are the bad people.
Yeah.
And I had a great conversation with a guy that was running for sheriff in Johnson County back in May. And his stance was to have teachers carry guns. And so we stood there and talked for a good 40 minutes about this subject. And I said, because I was wearing my Mom's Demands button, and it was a Wear Orange Day. And so I happened to be in Johnson County for an event. And so we saw it and asked about it. And he was like, oh, you must hate guns. That was his lead in. I was like, no, actually, I don't. I enjoy going to the range just as much as anybody else does. And which I think surprised him. And so he immediately went into school shootings, and that was his stance. And I said, I get wanting to keep kids safe. Like, that's where everybody's coming from, of wanting to keep kids safe. I said, I have some concerns around arming teachers. I said, so here's a couple of things that weigh on my mind. And I will also just kind of preemptively tell you, he said, I hadn't thought about it in that way. And so I said, one, let's say the teacher misses and trying to take out the active shooter and hits an innocent bystander. Is that teacher legally liable for what just happened? Let's say that the teacher doesn't take out the active shooter fast enough, and whatever is deemed fast enough. Is that teacher legally liable for the damage to the lives that were lost or the injuries that happened during that time when the teacher was deemed that they should have taken out the active shooter? What type of training and how often of this training will this happen? Are they going to get additional pay for this, to hold this type of certification and for this training? Is the school going to carry additional insurance regarding, this additional responsibility? And so we started talking about it in this nitty gritty part of it. And he's coming from it from a response time. And this isn't me defending it. I'm not for arming our teachers. So I'm going to explicitly say that. But he's coming at it from a response time. And I said, I like to come at it and trust the people who are trained to be able to do this. And I realized that we came into an issue, and clearly what happened in Uvalde is dangerous when the police didn't act fast enough. But I don't think that there was a good guy with a gun scenario. And I applaud the mom that, went in and saved people, because that was bravery that the police force wasn't using that day. But we've got to have better training. And I don't think limiting and creating more choke points is a way to help that. Because I've seen arguments of like reducing the number of doors.
Yeah. And so I do want to say mass shootings, school shootings, you're exactly like it gets to the deepest, darkest fears of a lot of people in this country. It's something that just is so terrifying to think about. But in all reality, that is a tiny smidge portion of the gun violence that happens every day in our country. And obviously we want to do everything we can to protect our schools. And I hope the folks out there listening to this from our area know that, like, I have faith in our response times with our local police departments. They do the drills and they are on it, y'all. We are gonna have, if worst case scenario, something like that ever happened in our area, from what I've seen, like, our police officers will not hesitate for a second. So I do want, like, that is something I can go to bed at night thinking that I feel confident about in our community. But I do also want to say that just hardening the target, which is what you hear a lot about, figuring out how to protect the school itself, like smaller or less entries. Yes, let's do what we can on that, but that is not the only thing. That's not the only solution. And bringing in more guns into the school with teachers is definitely not the solution. So yeah, that arming teachers is a really, really bad idea. And I'm glad that has not happened yet. And I hope that we can keep that at bay and not let that be legislation that passes, because I know we all think about it in the frame of mind of when the active shooter thing happens, if it ever happens. But you got to remember all the other days of the week that gun is wherever it is in that classroom, and children could potentially have access to it. So yeah, so there are just a lot of factors you need to think about when introducing a gun into a place like a school. So.
Yeah. Well, and then, I kind of want to, as we're coming to a point, we talk a lot about, these common sense gun legislation and stuff. And I mean, 100% on board. I don't think a solution is a one component. Mm-hmm. I think solutions are multi components. And so if we think about all the spider web of things that happen that either cause something else to happen, this trigger point of what happens, and I don't mean to use that word lightly, or that expression, but in that sense of, if we start having better access to mental health care, if we start having better access to schools and jobs and quality health care, and and quality education, and knowing that there's hope that's coming, and we start addressing anti-bullying of what's happening, and having more inclusion, more in community, less division within our community, and less, divisions incited by our elected officials, so that it's not us versus them. It's like, oh, that's my neighbor. And so if we have this multifaceted approach, then, as well as common sense gun legislation, all of these together are going to reduce the number of gun violence and number of gun deaths that we have. It's not a one thing that we're going to do this again, horrible expression, but this silver bullet that's going to save us. It's going to be these, as we do this multi-pronged approach. And we have to do all of this to do this. And right now, we're not getting that in Nashville. We're not getting the measures that are going to keep us safe. We have people like Rusty Crowe that are putting barriers in front of us, intentionally making it harder. And so people are frustrated, their lack of access to care, to don't see hope, to, I mean, just it's sad. And so I want to be part of the solution in Nashville, which is why I'm running for state senate, which is why I'm asking for your vote on November 8th. And I'm proud to wear the badge as being a common sense gun candidate of Moms Demand Action, because this nonpartisan group that recognizes candidates on any side of the political aisle, who are working for common sense solutions to keep our community safe. I'm proud to be part of that community. So,
well, we're proud that you're with us. But yeah, it's a lot of times it's people around here, once they let me tell them that I am a gun owner, they're usually kind of, what? I thought you hated guns. No. So, we have a lot more in common than we don't. As you know, in this community, we have a lot more in common, a lot more that we agree on than you realize. We just need leadership at the Capitol to reflect that. So.
Yeah, don't let politicians use fear mongering and divide our communities to tell us that we don't have these things in common, that we aren't, like Democrats, Republicans, and of any, or any political ideology, aren't gun owners. Everybody is gun owners, like in terms of across the political spectrum. That's not unique to one party or another. Yeah. And so, this fear mongering of Democrats are going to take guns or any of that stuff just isn't true. Just isn't true. No. Just look for the party that is looking to unite your community, and look for the politician that is looking to keep your community safe. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Jessi, I want to thank you for being with me here tonight. And, I want to real quick, I see a comments popped up in the questions. So I'll just pop this up here. Delana has shared that she is, appreciative for us having this conversation. So I appreciate you tuning in this evening and watching. So we've got a couple of things coming up. As you can see, the volunteer part is coming. Continues to tick through. So we've got canvassing and phone banking that's going on every, the phone banking, dedicated phone banking is Monday and Thursday evening. You can sign up here, or you can sign up using this link, and we're going to do it through our new office, which, like I said, is 419 West Market Street in Johnson City. It's open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Pick up your yard sign there. If you put in a request for one, we're rolling those out right now. But if you haven't, filled out the Google form for that, come by the office and pick up a yard sign, and make sure to sign up for a volunteer shift. So on Monday, I'm excited to share that I'll be with Dr. Jason Martin, who is in Carter County. He'll be at the Carter County Courthouse at 4:00 speaking, and I'll be joining him there. And then on Tuesday in Johnson County at the Arts Center, and then at the Visitor Center. So it'll start at, I believe, 3:00 and then 4:00. So respectively, the Arts Center and then the Visitor Center. Dr. Martin will be up there, and I'll be joining him there. But if you're tuning in from other places, I know he'll be in Unicoi County on Tuesday morning, and he's been in Northeast Tennessee for a while. So flipping this seat is important, as well as flipping who's in the gubernatorial mansion, and flipping that seat, because we need to have common sense and more people that are fighting for Tennesseans across the board. So this is your moment to say, I'm going to make a change. I'm not just going to share something on social media. I'm going to get involved, and I'm going to start talking to people in my community, because talking about politics has been labeled as this, like, oh, we shouldn't talk about that. That's impolite conversation. But in reality, we talk about it all the time. We talk about it when we, donate to somebody's GoFundMe for a medical bill or for the, medical debt. We talk about it when somebody's house burns down and they're falling through the cracks, and those social safety nets aren't working, and they're intentionally not working because of the way that it's been set up, and we donate to help save them. We talk about it, and we talk about wanting good schools, good jobs, when we're looking for a place that we can afford to buy or rent. And just all the ways, all of that's politics. So I encourage everybody to keep having these these conversations because they matter. And things have just gotten so extreme with the Republican Party that we got to right the ship and get common sense in Nashville. So, like I said, my name's Kate Craig. I'm running for state senate here in District 3, and I'm asking for your vote. And so thank you for tuning in this evening. And I look forward to seeing you next Sunday when my campaign team will be joining me. And so that'll be Noah Nordstrom, Chase Lindsay, Arya Naba, and Kristen Langston. So join me, and we'll be talking about ways to get involved as we do this push ahead of early voting. So we'll see you soon, and thank you.